Welcome back to News in Focus. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, we are joined by Khalid Albaih. He's a Sudanese political cartoonist, civil rights activist, and freelance journalist. Now, he, of course, unveiled a sculpture at the Nirox Park. Now, for somebody like myself who's been living in Joburg, I still haven't visited it. I think now will be a good time for me to go ahead and break the ice. Let me welcome Khalid to this conversation now. Khalid, assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so Khalid, talk to us about the sculpture that was unveiled at Nirox.
Yeah, it's my first sculpture.
Okay,
it's
right.
I'm mostly known for my political cartoons.
Sure.
And this has been, a huge opportunity for me to work with the guys here at Nirox Park and work with Qatar museums as well for supporting the work, and working with the local foundry as well that made the sculpture, and working with local materials and everything. So it's a big thing for me. And the sculpture is called Us Dictator, or US Dictator, or Pronanathus, which is like basically the period between the fall of a dictator and the rise of another one. And the sculpture is basically a shell, or what's left of a dictator,
Yes.
right? That we can see in all authoritarian regimes. They're always like this. In the main square, there's always this big sculpture, and this is when it comes down. Always a historical moment. And the idea is that we have people that become these dictators that were once looked at as heroes.
Yes.
People that people respected, but somehow they morph into becoming the same thing that they hated and the people hated. And this is the idea. The work is about how do we go from this to that? How do we break this circle? This cycle of just the continuous going from one bad system to the other.
Yes.
And so it's also a social experiment, because, or a participatory art, because you get to walk up and finish the sculpture. So we are the next dictator.
Yes.
So it's kind of a play on words, and it's also kind of like just a fun thing to do, but also makes you think about how do we get here.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this is that it speaks about Africa after colonialism. And I mean, from a country where you come from, Sudan, which, tragically is still going through a horrible civil war. It's been sort of in the history of Sudan and many other African countries, not just within the north of Africa, but also in the east and the west of the continent.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's not only in Africa, it's also in Asia, it's all in South America, it's all in all post-colonial countries. And this is the issue, right? That these dictators will come as saviors from colonialism, or from post-colonialism, and from the petrodollar, or from whatever it is, and they kind of find themselves within a system that makes them become that dictator.
I'm just seeing it here. Obviously, when we have the sculpture itself, it's just reminiscent of, and I think of, probably I would feel the most brutal dictator of in our time in Africa, Idi Amin.
Of course.
I mean, when you look at Uganda and how he, of course, ruled, I mean, he's just one of a very few. I beg your pardon. Africa as a continent, we look at colonialism and we look how bad it was, especially when you look at the Democratic Republic of Congo with King Leopold II, and how he obviously ruled that part of Congo. And I think, and we all think, never again. And yet, Africa is still entrenched in this problem of power, the hunger for power, and it's the citizens that suffer at the end of it.
Yes, absolutely. But again, it's colonialism wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Right? And
we just came out of apartheid 31 years ago in South Africa.
And the reminiscence of that is this, things like that. And it's not that we came out of a colonialism and a colonialist project to the whole southern part of the world, and we will just be a great country and everything will work, because that it can't. I mean, even personally, a lot of the people that come from these countries still suffer that. Even at the third generation now, or fourth generation, living in this made-up countries, really, because a lot of these regions, all these borders are new, I have family that are Egyptian, for example, because there was a line that was put between Sudan and Egypt. Okay, this is Sudanese and this is Egyptian, right? Same thing between Libya and Egypt, and it's just straight lines. It's actually funny, you know. And the story between making the border between Sudan and Uganda is also a very funny story.
Yeah.
And because it's drawn by 2 British officers.
Yeah. I mean,
right. So this is what this is what we end up fighting for, borders that we didn't even make.
Well, it's a similar story, like, for example, Zimbabwe and South Africa, because there was a huge migration that was happening. When you look at the Ndebele people, I mean, there's in South Africa and, of course, in Zimbabwe. So, I mean, you bring a very valid point with regards to the borders that have been drawn. Khalid, I want to talk on satire, because if you're not living in a democratic country, it's very difficult for you to go ahead and write it. I mean, I know Sapiro is one of the classical political cartoonists that occurs in South Africa, and of course he's been coming under fire internationally. Yes, no, for sure. And obviously when he drew the cartoon of Zuma taking a shower, I mean,
the shower,
he got into a lot of problems with that from the African National Congress. But where do you see political cartoons, Khalid, in this modern day and age, given the volatility of Africa and the repression of media?
You know, this is the point. I mean, it's the freedom for satire and the freedom for political cartoonists is, I think, it's a gauge, like to kind of know where you are in terms of freedom of expression, because at the end of the day, it's about laughing at power, and there is one thing that dictators hate the most, which is laughing at them.
Yes.
Because that means that you don't respect them, you're not scared of them. And this is all they have. They're scaring people.
Yes.
So it's very important to know where we are in that. But also in the West as well, in the countries that they believe that they have freedom of expression, there's also red lines, right? And there's, the New York Times doesn't have political cartoonists anymore. There was cartoonists fired from the Jerusalem Post in Israel, an American cartoonist, for drawing a cartoon about Netanyahu as the Animal Farm. And there's loads of examples, and the closest one, of course, is the Washington Post cartoonist that quit her job because the editor was giving her a hard time about doing cartoons about Trump and Jeff Bezos and the tech bros. So it's this Western look of you guys don't accept a joke, or you don't know how to deal with political cartoons. Of course, again, after the Prophet Muhammad cartoons and all of these things. Yes, alayhi salam. And it's but at the same time, they don't look inwards. They don't look at themselves.
This is where I want to ask: where do you draw the line between satire and insulting religion? You spoke about the cartoon of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I remember here in South Africa when that cartoon came out. I think it was 15 to 16 years ago. I mean, the ulama were up in arms. I mean, rightfully so, because you can't go ahead and insult such an important figure to us as Muslims. So where does the line get drawn with regards to that? Because obviously, insulting politicians, I mean, it's one thing. They are given responsibility of power, but really insulting such a global figure and such an important figure to us as Muslims, or any other prophet for that matter, whether it's Jesus for the Christians or Moses for the Jews, I mean, there has to be a red line when it comes to that.
I think the red line is definitely up for the artists, and it's not about, I don't think it's about drawing the prophet, or sorry, it's about satire, or, that we have historical Muslim books that drew the prophet. And that was fine, because it held the respect that it should, and it was talking about there was a narrative to it.
Sure.
Right? And for me, I think the importance of drawing religious figures or drawing about religion or whatever, I think it's a matter of you need to, as a cartoonist, need to know what you're talking about. Yeah. And need to know why are you doing this? Because at the end of the day, you have a great power, Yes. And it's a Spider-Man quote. If you have, with great power comes great responsibility.
Of course, yeah.
So it's basically, it comes from that. If you want to draw about the prophet, okay, great. But what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
Is when the intent becomes that I draw the prophet because I can draw the prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, then what are we doing? And you instantly now become a hero just for drawing the prophet. Right? You have police surroundings. You're in every page of, if you just want to gain any sort of publicity, this is what you have to do now. So it's about what and why are we doing this, right? And it's about also building bridges, and it's about a lot of things. So I think it's a personal responsibility for political cartoonists. And I've met a lot of one of the cartoonists, the Danish cartoonists from the Prophet Muhammad cartoons, and also cartoonists from Charlie Hebdo. The Danish cartoonists were more like, we didn't know. We were drawing this for a local community, and and they're editorial cartoonists, very established in Denmark at the time. They didn't understand the power of the internet at the time, that this will spread to the world. But they themselves really have a very basic idea of what they were doing. They thought, oh, okay, it's time to do this. We're going to do this, and because I need to make a cartoon the next day for the newspaper.
But do you not think that, given the rise of Islamophobia, surely they were a little bit aware of it? Given, Europe at the time, the rise of Islamophobia, there was huge hostilities, obviously coming from post 9/11, and of course 7/7 in London at the time. So, I know obviously you're just interpreting what they're saying. I find it very hard to believe them, but be that as it may.
But the main thing for me. I think cartoonists need to know what they're talking about.
Yeah, of course.
And why are they doing that? Because it could be hate speech if you're just doing it because you literally hate someone or a whole people, or insulting 2 billion people isn't really a good thing to do.
No, of course.
It's not a good, no matter what you're trying to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Are you trying to talk to these 2 million people, or are you just trying to billion people, or are you trying to tell them, oh, all of you are stupid?
Yeah.
How are you gonna fix anything with that? So this is a huge responsibility that I think, and we work in the region, in the Arab world or in the Middle East or whatever. We work in circumstances with a lot of, I didn't work because I worked on the internet, but a lot of our, the people that we look up to and so on, worked in very hard circumstances, right? It was censorship from society, censorship from the government, and some of them got jailed for way less reasons and got, assassinated or targeted or whatever for way less reasons than drawing the Prophet. So the fight that we go to, or our colleagues went through, or still go through until today, is for freedom of expression, to get messages to the people.
Sure.
Right? But it's really funny for me, really, in a dark comedy way, is that the way that they believe that, in the West, they believe that this is the message, the norm, right? This is the message that we would like to deliver, right? Without thinking about the implications, or what is it, or what are their counterparts doing, right? To counter these things,
Khalid, I have to stop you there because we have to go for a break.
Yes.
I'm going to continue the conversation after the break with Khalid Albaih. We're going to be touching on the deadly civil war that is currently occurring in Sudan. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to News in Focus. I'm still in conversation with Khalid Albaih. Khalid, since 2023, obviously this deadly civil war that has occurred, obviously between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese army. I just wanted to get your take on it. I don't know if you have family that is currently in Sudan at this moment, but we talk about obviously the genocide that is happening in Gaza, and there's a genocide that is happening in Sudan. That in itself, one has to be looked at. This humanitarian crisis that Sudan's going through, it's again one of the largest, if not the largest, displacement of a nation that is currently on the go. As a Sudanese born, how does it feel to you right now just to see what is happening in the country that is home to you?
I worked most of my life to... I got into cartooning and all of this because in hopes that we can have a country that we can be proud of and participate in the making of, and build it for our children. When the revolution happened, it gave us that hope in 2019 when Al-Bashir fell.
Yes.
And this is we all hoped for a better future. And then, when the coup happened, by the army and the RSF together against the civilians, it was the first step towards the civil war. And now watching what's happening and the war that's been raging now for almost 3 years, it's just people just want peace. They want this to stop because it's getting more complicated and it's getting absolutely out of hand. And this war is not going to be won by either side, because one side has a lot of backing, financial backing, and both of them have a lot of relations in the region, right? One more than the other, of course, and it's not going to end, this way. It's not. No one is going to win. This is just going to keep going, and I think this is kind of part of. Maybe that's how they want Sudan to be, just an ongoing raving war, right? Just like whether it's Yemen or whether it's in Libya, where it's de facto two countries that are just living together.
I speak a lot to, when we have interviews with Dr. Amira Osman and Professor Bashir Osman, and a lot of the times they speak about how since obviously independence had occurred with Sudan, there's always been wars upon wars. And I mean, as a citizen and as a Sudanese yourself, I mean, this is frustrating. Any young person, man or woman, that wants to really make an impact in society. I mean, not a lot of people have the privileges like you, of course, being outside and having that voice. A lot of people are trapped within Sudan at this moment. And I guess that's a frustration, isn't it? That when you see these revolutions upon revolutions, wars upon wars, I mean, it's devastating. And it has a devastating impact on that very same Sudanese citizen that wants to make an impact on the country.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But again, there's two things. One is that a lot of people that are in Sudan right now want to be in Sudan, and they want to be there during the war. Sure. And they're, incredible activists and just, doctors and engineers, or even just, young men and women that are basically holding the country together now. Yeah. With systems running the hospital, with systems running community kitchens, and they're absolutely doing an incredible job. Very brave. And they're in Sudan and they don't want to leave Sudan, because they want to help the people that really can't leave. Yeah. Right? So there's amazing people that are doing amazing, incredible things, really. And growing up watching, one thing happen after the other is really why this sculpture that I've done is about that. And why the political cartoons is about that is because we want to fix or just try to indicate where did we go wrong? Where does it go wrong in this cycle, right? Since the independence until today, right? How do we move that? But again, Sudan does not exist in silo, right?
Yes, of
we're
course.
Connected to this region, and we're connected by everything that happens in this region. So that's why I believe in solidarity, because I don't think Sudan can never be, prosperous as an island. All this region needs to work together, against that forces that be there, and create, peace, and create, what are all our problems, so we can work together to solve them together.
Khalid, you speak about what are the problems. I want to go back to 2014. Omar al-Bashir, dictator. Your sculpture is a reminiscence of what dictators are. He comes to South Africa. He's got this ICC arrest warrant. At the time, Jacob Zuma is the president of South Africa. He comes and he goes. It was during an African Union event that had occurred. As a Sudanese, and of course you've made your trip to South Africa, what did you feel at the time, knowing that South Africa as a country had gone through all these years of colonialism and apartheid, and here's somebody who, of course, comes here with that ICC arrest warrant, I beg your pardon, and is just let off scot-free. What was your thinking at that time, and when you come to South Africa now, 11 years later?
I mean, my thinking at the time, and my thinking today, I think is very similar. A lot of African leaders or African, even dictators, believe that the ICJ and the ICC are all puppet courts for the West. They do what the West tells them to do, right? And now we see what happened with the South African case, with Israel and Netanyahu and Gallant, and U.S. actually sanctioning ICJ and ICJ judges, right, in front of the whole world, right? And South Africa actually, also being targeted because of that, right? So you do kind of believe yeah, maybe Bashir was right. He was right because look at what's happening now. They target it towards us, but when it comes to them, and this is what the senator, the American senator, I can't remember his name, Lindsey something.
Lindsey Graham, yeah.
Lindsey Graham said, if they get to the Israelis, they'll get to us next. So they know, they know. So yes, we were disappointed. The Sudanese people were disappointed because of that. But yes, we also understand that this is targeted towards African leaders and non-Western leaders.
Khalid, where do you see, as the civil war rages on and the RSF and the Sudanese army the fires are being exchanged? Amnesty International a few weeks ago came out and said that war crimes are being committed by the RSF. But I think you can have all of these Amnesty International, I beg your pardon, statements that are coming out. All of this is great on paper, but it's the Sudanese citizen that is suffering at the end of the day. As a Sudanese yourself, there has to be a light at the end of the tunnel for this to happen. But if that light at the end of the tunnel is achieved, surely the next hope is that there isn't another dictator that or continues the cycle of violence which has been occurring in this country.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the answer to that is going after these crimes and not letting these crimes continue.
Sure.
Because if they get away with one crime, then they can get away with the other one. And then it just becomes normalized for us. So but the solution for this is to actually take these people to court, right? And show them that they'll have to answer to what happened. Because it hasn't been one genocide that the RSF committed since the start of the war. They committed multiple genocides. And they just like the Israeli army, they filmed themselves doing it.
Yes.
Right? And that's all because that nothing happens. And things need to happen, whether locally in Sudan or whether internationally for Netanyahu and Gallant, right? There needs to be serious steps taken to make sure that these things don't happen again.
One final question. I just want to get your view on the future of political cartoons. Now, it's a question I wanted to fit in the first segment. Somebody like a Zapiro, of course, whose surname is Shapiro, he a Jew himself, really doing cartoons which depict Israel as a genocidal state, as them committing genocide in Gaza. Of course, he's been hounded, he's been taken to, he's really been criticized by many of the lobby groups here that are for Israel. You take that, you look at the future of political cartoons. Where do you see it, Khalid?
I see it. I see that this is the time where people need to understand, what they want and what they stand for, and if they stand for my right and as the same as their right, being the same as their right for freedom of expression, they should stand with this. It doesn't matter who he's criticizing, right? This is what we all agreed on, right? So they need to understand where this is coming from and why is he being threatened, right? So it's something that I think people should know about and stand against, definitely. And the future of cartooning, I think, really depends on this. Otherwise, we're just going to be doing cartoons about, nothing.
Nothing, definitely. Khalid, absolute pleasure having you on here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
That is Khalid Albaih, Sudanese political cartoonist, civil rights activist, and freelance journalist. If you visit Nirox sculpture, take a look at that sculpture. It's beautifully created. Just a great work of art, and really shows how the creative industry within our continent is alive and kicking. That's all I have for you here on News in Focus from myself, for Hospital, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.